Very good preparation. It's going to be very lively in there, isn't it? Oh, do buck up, really, please, love. I'm so sorry. Well, I'm enjoying this. Bye, darling. Have a lovely day. Lots of love.
End of Starmer. Starmer painfully hands over the MP position to Reform UK after recent polls reviews. It's official. Reform is now the de facto opposition in the UK, as even Keir Starmer seems to have accepted the party's growing threat. Sources close to the Labour leader have revealed that Starmer acknowledges the real challenge for his party is not the Tories, but Reform. While the official opposition remains the Conservative Party, led by Kemi Badenoch, Labour seems to have all but written them off. They're no longer looking at Tory policies because they know the real enemy is a rising force led by Nigel Farage. In a shocking turn of events, the Labour Party is gearing up to fight Reform, indicating that they view them as a much bigger problem than the Tories. The shift in focus comes after growing fears that the Conservative Party, under the leadership of Badenoch, will not be a serious contender in the next election. Reform, however, is starting to look like a serious threat to Labour's dominance, even in traditionally safe Labour constituencies. With a growing momentum, Reform is showing that it can overturn long-standing Labour majorities, forcing Labour to rethink its entire electoral strategy. Starmer's camp knows that the real battle is now with Farage, who is described as the nemesis of the Labour leader. Farage's influence has grown significantly, and sources suggest that Starmer is genuinely concerned about his rise. It's almost as if Starmer can't escape the looming threat of Farage's political force. The term Terminator style has even been used to describe the relentless and inevitable march of Farage's influence. No matter how hard Starmer runs or how far he tries to distance himself, Farage seems to be catching up. The scale of Reform's influence is evident in the numbers. Recent data suggests that Reform has already managed to overturn a 15,000 majority in one Labour seat, with only 6 votes standing between them and victory. This close call has sent alarm bells ringing within the Labour Party. If one seat with a 15,000 majority can be overturned, it's a clear signal that no Labour seat is truly safe anymore. Labour is facing an existential crisis as it realizes that the Reform Party is making inroads in constituencies where they once thought they were untouchable. It's not just individual constituencies that are at risk. It's the whole Labour brand that's under threat. As Reform gains momentum, Labour is scrambling to respond to the new reality. The once dominant Labour machine is now worrying about losing seats it once considered safe. The internal panic is palpable, as Starmer's party realizes that it's not just about defending against the Tories anymore, it's about fending off a much more unpredictable and formidable force. And then there's the psychological toll this shift is taking on Starmer himself. Sources claim that Starmer, who once seemed relatively calm and collected in the face of the Tory threat, now finds himself preoccupied with the rise of Reform. It's as if Farage's presence in British politics has taken over Starmer's thoughts. He knows that if Farage continues on his current trajectory, it's only a matter of time before his party faces an even more significant challenge, not just from the Conservatives, but from a revitalized Reform Party that's gaining ground. In a way, Labour simply didn't anticipate the Labour leader, who should be focusing on Tory policies and campaigning for a Labour victory, now seems to be losing sleep over the growing threat posed by Reform. This sudden shift in priorities is telling. Labour no longer views the Tories as their primary adversary. The focus has shifted, and all signs point to a strategic recalibration where Reform is now the central concern. It's not just a political shift, but a recognition that the old ways of campaigning and politicking might not be enough to secure Labour's hold on power. The emergence of reform has thrown a spanner into the works, and the party's once solid grip on power is starting to look increasingly fragile. In the face of a rejuvenated Farage and his Reform Party, Labour is finding it difficult to maintain its stronghold, even in traditionally Labour-friendly regions. This development represents a new phase in British politics, where the once ironclad divide between Labour and the Tories is no longer the central focus. Instead, reform is now seen as the true opposition, with both Labour and the Tories realizing that they may soon have to contend with a force much larger than either of them anticipated. With every passing day, reform's influence grows, and Labour's anxiety deepens. The political landscape is changing, and it seems that Starmer is waking up to the reality that the Labour Party's future is now intertwined with the rise of Farage. If things continue on this trajectory, it could lead to a political showdown the likes of which the UK has never seen before. As the election approaches, it's clear that no one, not even the Labour Party, can afford to underestimate reform. The question now is whether Labour can recover from this shock and reassert its position, or if reform will become the new political force to reckon with. Only time will tell, but one thing is for sure: the battle for British politics is far from over. As the political landscape continues to shift in the UK, the growing influence of Reform Party under Nigel Farage has completely altered the dynamics. Once relegated to the fringes, Reform is now positioning itself as the true opposition to the Labour Party, catching the attention of both political insiders and ordinary voters. What's becoming increasingly apparent is that Labour under Keir Starmer has begun to realize that the real threat to its future electoral prospects may no longer be the Conservatives, but rather the rapid rise of Reform, led by the ever-persistent Farage. Sources close to Labour's inner circle have confirmed that Starmer and his team are now adjusting their strategies to account for the rise of Reform. They know that if Reform continues to gain momentum, it could effectively undermine Labour's stronghold in key constituencies. And the stakes have never been higher, with Reform already making significant inroads in places previously considered safe for Labour. It's clear that the party is facing an unprecedented challenge. There's a palpable sense of concern within Labour ranks about the party's ability to defend its seats in the next election. With figures such as Farage leading the charge, the notion of a safe Labour seat has become increasingly elusive. The party, once confident in its ability to maintain a broad base of support, now faces the uncomfortable reality that even the most loyal constituencies may no longer be as secure as they once were. A recent example of this shift came when Reform managed to overturn a 15,000 majority in a Labour-held seat, with the result being decided by just 6 votes. This close result was not an anomaly. It was a clear sign of the growing power and influence of Reform. For Starmer, this presents a difficult political dilemma. While Labour's focus has traditionally been on the Tories, the rise of Reform has forced the party to reorient its efforts. It's no longer just about defending against the Conservative Party's policies and messaging. It's about countering a force that has the potential to take away votes from Labour's traditional base. Reform, with its populist appeal and clear opposition to the established political order, is beginning to tap into a disillusioned electorate that Labour has failed to fully engage. The psychological toll on Starmer cannot be underestimated. The Labour leader, once seen as the promising figure to lead his party out of opposition, now finds himself constantly looking over his shoulder at the growing influence of Farage and his Reform Party. Starmer, who has made significant efforts to distance himself from the Tories and their policies, now faces an existential crisis. It's no longer enough to differentiate himself from the Conservatives. Now he must contend with a party that appeals directly to voters who feel alienated by the political establishment. This presents a major challenge for Labour, which has traditionally relied on the working-class vote to secure victories in crucial constituencies. The emergence of reform also raises questions about the future of the Conservative Party. While Labour seems preoccupied with Farage's ascension, the Tories are also facing an internal reckoning. With their leadership under scrutiny and their political platform increasingly being questioned, the Tories are struggling to regain their footing. While they are technically the official opposition, the reality is that they may not be the serious challenger to Labour's dominance that they once were. Instead, it's the increasingly formidable Reform Party that is making the most noise and drawing the most attention. For Farage, this represents the culmination of years of political maneuvering, and it's clear that he's not going to let the opportunity slip by. What does this mean for the future of British politics? The rise of reform signals a potential realignment of the political spectrum. With both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party on the defensive, the stage is set for a new era of political competition, one in which the established parties may no longer hold the same sway over the electorate. If reform continues to draw disaffected voters and challenge the status quo, it could force both Labour and the Tories to reassess their strategies and platforms in ways that were previously unthinkable. The implications for the Labour Party are significant. The shift in focus from the Tories to reform is not just about adjusting to a new political reality. It's about survival. The fear within Labour is that if they don't act quickly and decisively to confront the rise of reform, they could find themselves For Starmer, this poses a serious dilemma. Labour's leadership has long been rooted in the idea of offering a balanced, centrist vision for the country. But as reform continues to gain momentum, Starmer is realizing that this approach might no longer be enough to keep Labour in power. Farage's populist approach, which has worked so well for him in the past, may hold the key to connecting with a new generation of voters who are disillusioned with traditional politics. The rise of reform forces Starmer to ask himself some tough questions. Is Labour's centrist approach enough to hold off the rise of populism? Or is it time for the party to evolve, to offer something more radical that resonates with a disaffected electorate? The fact that Labour is now shifting its focus to reform, rather than the Tories, marks a profound change in the political dynamics. It's no longer just about defeating the Conservatives. It's about keeping reform at bay. The potential for reform to eat into Labour's vote share is very real, and Starmer knows it. That's why, behind closed doors, Labour is grappling with how to address this growing threat. Their once solid grip on working-class constituencies is slipping, and Labour's leadership realizes that if reform continues to make inroads, they could soon be on the receiving end of a significant electoral shock. In many ways, the rise of reform exposes a deep vulnerability within the British political system. The Tories, in their current state, are in disarray, and while they remain the official opposition, they are failing to present a compelling alternative to Labour. In contrast, reform has the flexibility to position itself as a true alternative to both the major parties. And unlike Labour, which is still tied to its traditional left-wing platform, reform has managed to appeal to a broader coalition of voters. From disillusioned Labour supporters to right-wing voters seeking a new home, at a time when voters across the UK are increasingly frustrated with the state of the country, Starmer's approach to immigration seems out of touch with the concerns of ordinary citizens. His claim about high-profile arrests, for example, was made without offering any specifics, raising questions about the accuracy of his statement. It's one thing to talk tough about illegal immigration, but it's another to actually demonstrate an ability to tackle the problem. Voters are keenly aware of the fact that rhetoric alone is not enough to address complex issues like immigration. One of the main reasons why immigration has become such a heated issue in the UK is due to the public's growing perception that the government and politicians in general have failed to get a handle on the situation. The surge in small boat crossings from France has created a crisis that has put immense pressure on the UK's asylum system, local councils, and public services. For many in working-class communities, the issue is not just about immigration itself, but about the strain it places on their communities and the lack of action from politicians to provide real solutions. Starmer's failure to present a coherent, clear plan to deal with this challenge risks further alienating these voters. For years now, the Labour Party has struggled with how to frame its position on immigration. While there are members within the party who are in favor of more liberal immigration policies, Starmer's attempt to strike a balance between these different factions has left many uncertain about where the party truly stands. Immigration is an issue that demands clarity and direction, but Starmer's inability to present a unified stance only fuels the perception that Labour is divided and directionless. This lack of clarity on such an important issue is a significant hurdle for Starmer and his party as they prepare for the next election. In contrast, the Conservatives, despite their own struggles with handling illegal immigration, have presented a more consistent message on border control and illegal immigration. While their policies have been widely criticized for being ineffective, they at least present a clear stance on immigration, and this has earned them support from voters who want decisive action. Starmer, on the other hand, appears to be playing a political game, offering tough rhetoric without a clear plan or any tangible results. This approach could leave him vulnerable to further criticism in the lead-up to the election. The public's frustration with the lack of real progress on immigration is compounded by the broader sense of dissatisfaction with the political establishment as a whole. Many feel that politicians have failed to address their concerns, particularly those who live in areas that have been directly impacted by immigration. The perception that politicians, particularly those in Westminster, are out of touch with the everyday concerns of ordinary people has been a growing issue for some time now. If Starmer continues to rely on empty statements and political talking points, rather than offering real solutions, he will only reinforce this perception. As the Labour Party looks to gain ground in the next general election, Starmer's credibility is in danger of becoming a significant obstacle. His failure to deliver clear, workable solutions on immigration, combined with his tendency to exaggerate or mislead the public, could result in Labour losing the trust of voters who are increasingly looking for authenticity in their political leaders. For many voters, the Labour Party's past failings on immigration, coupled with Starmer's inability to present a credible alternative, makes them question whether the party can truly lead the country forward. For Starmer, this is a pivotal moment in his leadership. He must demonstrate that he is not only capable of being tough on immigration, but that he has a detailed, practical plan to address the issue. If he continues to make sweeping statements without evidence, or fail to back up his promises with action, it will only serve to reinforce the idea that he is another politician playing games with the public. The British people are tired of political spin and empty promises. They want real solutions to the problems that affect their communities. If Starmer is to regain the public's trust and present Labour as a credible alternative to the Conservative Party, he will need to move beyond rhetoric and provide concrete policies that address the concerns of the electorate. The issue of immigration is too important to be treated as a political football. It requires a serious, considered approach, one that balances the need for secure borders with the humanitarian obligations the UK has towards asylum seekers and refugees. Starmer has an opportunity to define his leadership and prove that he can provide the solutions that the British public so desperately needs. But whether he can rise to the challenge or continue to disappoint remains to be seen.